So good evening, everyone. Wonderful to see so many of you here tonight. We have quite an exciting evening ahead of us, I believe. But before we get underway with sharing with you what we're going to share with you tonight, I'm going to ask Monsignor to go ahead and introduce and open us with a prayer.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? No point in me talking if you can't hear, so that's okay. We're a church, and when we begin to think about who we are and where the Spirit is calling us, we must begin with prayer. So let us pause for a moment of silent reflection and remember that we are in the presence of God, that we are a living church, and the Spirit calls us to prayer. In the power of Jesus Christ, we call down God's Spirit upon us, a spirit of wisdom, a spirit of love, a spirit of courage, a spirit of vision, that as we come together and bind ourselves into a community of living church, we may sense, feel, and be confident that we are led in the power of the Spirit. So led, we are confident, we are courageous, and we become visionary. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. Now, I was asked to say a couple of words about the enterprise that we're celebrating tonight. Many of us belong to a tradition here, Holy Family. It goes back almost 30 years since we did a vision project, and it was managed and inspired by Carl Holschneider, who is here. And Carl made me look good, but actually he managed the whole thing. It was his vision, and it was his enterprise that made it all happen. But remembering what Cambria is doing now, she's doing everything correctly, more correctly than in our enterprise 30 years ago, in the sense that as a good leader, she has done consultation, a wide consultation. She has exercised a very strict diligence in coming to whatever vision and whatever future she will announce tonight for us. You know, when we look at pastors and leaders in parishes around the Archdiocese, traditionally, for many, many years, all the time I was downtown, we looked at two different kinds. One was a maintenance pastor. Come in and he'd say, now, let's not rock the boat here, we're fine, just keep going the way we're going. We don't want to get complicated, we don't want to grow too much. And then you have progressive and visionary pastors and leaders of parishes that say, we want to grow, we want to believe, we want to look into the future, we want to hand on a legacy of the gifts and the riches that God has given to us. That's visionary, and that's Cambria. And she is led by a very strong team of lay leadership in Holy Family. That's very important when you think about this community. We have dedicated ourselves all through the years in celebration of lay leadership. And what we have to offer tonight is the product of long reflection and prayer by our lay leaders. Way back when, 30 years ago, we borrowed a lot of money. We didn't have much money, but we went out and borrowed it because we believed in ourselves. That was it. We actually believed in ourselves. We said, do you think we can do this? Of course we can do this. So we began with this sense that we are a church, we are alive. We believe in ourselves, and we believe that we are called at this time in the power of the Spirit to make our church grow. It's not a worldly thing we're doing, it's a spiritual journey. And it takes courage and it takes faith. And that comes from the strength of lay leadership. It doesn't come from the priests. It comes from the power of the Holy Spirit working in a people. And you are the people. You are the leadership in this community. So I want you to be attentive to the invitation. You know, when I was fundraising, and I would go to somebody that was a good prospect, and I'd say, no, we have a vision here at Holy Family. We're going to hand on something. We're going to shape the future. And I'm going to give you the privilege of belonging. And he said, well, what will it cost? Well, I'll tell you what it'll cost right now, but it's the privilege. I mean, I'm serious about that. That wasn't a gimmick. I mean, I believe that it was a privilege for me to belong to a vision project, and I think that's the way it is right now. It's a privilege for us to be placed in this position now on this day to say, we will gift the future with the riches and the blessings which have come to us in such abundance. So I want you to kind of claim this. It's ours. It's ours to believe, it's ours to own, and it's ours to make happen. So I want to begin by encouraging you to lift up your gaze here. Take a second look at the possibilities that are here and pray over it. Let the Holy Spirit move us here as a living church to say we believe that at this time we are called to define our future. Okay, now I'll pass it on to somebody else.
Thank you very much, Monsignor, for those incredibly powerful words and the reminder of who we are as a visionary parish. It's not for nothing that we chose for the name of this effort, this master planning effort, Faith in Our Future, a Vision for the 21st Century. And when a small group of people gathered about 5 years ago to begin to talk about making some serious master planning efforts in the parish, given that we were coming up for 20 years since the Monsignor and Carl and the parish leaders at the time and many of you here embarked on that grand vision project which brought us all these wonderful buildings and this expansion of property and expansion and growth in terms of our parish membership, that it was time to begin to think about what the needs were for this parish for the 21st century. What do we need to do to sustain who we are and to grow as a parish and as a community of faith, even though we were facing and we are facing some very distinct challenges to try and understand what that meant for us as a community of faith to respond to the signs of the times, as the Second Vatican Council urged us to do. And so tonight is really the fruition of many years, 5 years of work on developing kind of a vision for the master plan, which, after we had this small group, we formed a master planning committee and then began talking with parish and school leadership. We had further committee meetings. We took a little time off to develop a pastoral plan, which took us about a year. And then we were ready to really embark on looking at recruiting and identifying an architect to help us create what is called the pre-design phase of the master plan. So we went through a very extensive and well thought out request for proposal, RFP process, which then surfaced Cuninghman architects who are here with us tonight. And we unanimously, as a master planning committee, selected them to be our architects. And so for the last 9 months, Cuningham has been working with many of you here, perhaps most of you here, have participated in one kind of a meeting or listening session or some other encounter with them to really do a deep dive into what your thoughts were, what our needs are as a parish in order to continue to sustain who we are and to continue to grow. And so tonight is the official end of the pre-design phase of the master plan. And what we are presenting you here tonight is the direction that is recommended to us by Cuningham and which has been, again, unanimously embraced by the master planning committee. And so we present to you tonight the direction that we will be moving over the next 5 years. So before I hand it off to the team of people here today who are going to walk you through this vision that you have created, not us, but you have created, I want to just say a few thank yous, because this has been a labor of great diligence and love and extremely hard work on the part of many, many people here. So I firstly want to say thank you to our wonderful architects, Dan Young, Teresa Forrest, and Jacqueline Squires, who've been just outstanding to work with. If you ever need an architect, go to Cuningham. They're amazing. So thank you very much to our architects. I want to say a huge thank you to our Master Planning Committee, very ably chaired by Michael Udell, and with incredible support from Mary Hatton, who's our Director of Parish Stewardship. And perhaps our members of the Master Planning Committee who are here, if you could please stand so we can recognize you. That would be you, Jaime, and Hayden, and Carl, and Shannon, thank you so much, and Darcy, very, very important. Oh, hello, and Tina, and Jim Griesgraber, and have I missed anybody else? Oh, Jane and Patricia. So thank you so much and there were other members as well. So I think they all deserve a round of applause. And then we also have a very important, he was not an official member of the Master Planning Committee, but he attended many of our meetings, and along with his wonderful colleague at the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. So this is Tim Frimmer. Tim, if you'd like to stand, who is a representative of the building department at the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. Just to let you know that we've got the Archdiocese involved at a very early stage as well, and they've been incredibly supportive and helpful. So thank you so much indeed. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand this off to Jackie.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm Jackie with Cunningham Group, and on behalf of us here, we want to also extend our thanks to Holy Family and to all of you. We've been able to interact a little bit, but the strength of this community is really what guides this journey and this process, and so we're excited to share that with you here today. Just a brief agenda. We'll talk a few minutes about what a master plan is and what those key objectives are, followed by the process. Some of you have probably been more involved than others, and so we just want to give a brief overview of where we've been and how we got to where we are today. And then we'll talk about the actual master plan vision that Cambria has mentioned, and there's 2 phases to that, so we'll describe those. And then talk about next steps. What are the things moving forward that we need to do? So this is a reminder. The master plan statement is faith in our future, a vision for the 21st century. That is part of the mission here already at Holy Family. So the point of a master plan is really to build on what was already established, and that's your mission statement, your reflection. So it's a part of that. It's not meant to replace that. It's meant to enhance it. We like to go over this. A master plan is a lot of things. It is a roadmap for the future, and in that it allows for logical implementation over time. And so as we walk through this master plan, you'll start to see there's some immediate next steps that are happening. There's also a longer vision that we'll get to. And that looks at both what's physically possible and what's fiscally possible. And perhaps most importantly, it is a living, breathing document, and that's something that we like to stress. Master plans are created at a point in time, and the principles of that master plan will carry forward, but it's something that will continue to be looked at and questioned as it moves forward. So the process of this master plan has been going on for years, but we were brought on about 9 months ago, and we wanted to share what the process has been in 2019 as we've developed this further. Dan and Teresa may have met some of you during the listening sessions with the ministries and staff. There were, I think, 2.5 days. We met with over 15 user groups. And a lot of that is that our process starts with listening. We're architects, we do master plans, we do design, but you are the people who are here day in and day out and will be going forward. And so it's very important that we hear what's important for you, what's working, what's not working, what do you wish that you had. And so these listening sessions were really key in sort of in helping us understand what the needs were, as well as what was working well. Then we had a large visioning session. I think there were about 50 people that came to that. And in that, we just talked about big picture. Again, a different group of folks, but what are the big pictures for Holy Family? What are some of the issues that are coming up? We didn't talk about design, we didn't talk about buildings, it was really what are the ideas? And then we took that and had some feedback sessions. So after those, we started to develop some questions, some ideas, some scenarios. And we had 2 different feedback sessions to hear what your thoughts were on those. And from that, we continued to develop the master plan. We met with the master planning steering committee multiple times, the leadership group, and throughout that process. So that's a rough overview of what we've been up to in the last 9 months. From all of that, there were also some key objectives that are really important in the master plan. All are welcome. You know, there's deferred maintenance that happens throughout. Unity of the student body. So what does this mean for the education center? A green open campus, having spaces for people to relax, to sit, for the kids to play and run. Support youth ministries and outreach ministries. Holy Family has a lot of ministries, which is amazing. And so how do we take that to another level or continue what you've been doing in the master plan? As well as create a community multi-use space. And really a lot of this is looking at viability into the future. Where will you be in 5 years, in 10 years, and how do we create a space that supports that? And so with that, then we come to the master plan. So again, there's 2 phases in the master plan. Phase 1 is more immediate needs. What are we looking at in the near future? And so we've identified 4 projects that will happen over the next couple years. I'm going to talk about them briefly, and then you'll hear from some others in more specificity. So the Education Center, summer 2020, we'll do some small renovations to the Education Center to enhance some of those spaces and allow for some movement, as well as create a transitional kindergarten program. And then in the following year, we'll look at renovating the administration office and the entrance into the school to create one entrance that's easily visible and do some rearrangement of some of the offices. And then we have the church renovations. You know, the church it's the heart of your campus here. It's why a lot of us are here. And so there are some things that have been identified that for renovations in the church. And then there are some just overall campus-wide improvements, including landscape and lighting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darcy.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the why behind some of the things in the Education Center. So we want to make sure that Holy Family School is viable long into the future. And we'll start with the blue cottage down at the bottom. So TK, Transitional Kindergarten, it's been talked about here for a long time before I came on board. It's just common sense. The blue cottage sits empty all day long until aftercare for time well spent. In an era of declining enrollment in Catholic schools, this immediately puts our enrollment back where it's more viable. Keeping enrollment up helps us sustain all the great programs that the students and parents of Holy Family like and have come to expect. It also allows our dedicated families to have one drop-off and one pickup. They can have all their kids in one place. There has been great interest. We're already interviewing families for next year. We're forging ahead with that. And then the science lab. In today's world, STEM education is so incredibly important. And in the lower grades, what science education really is just planting seeds of excitement about science and expanding children's little worlds so that they want to pursue things in STEM down the line. To do STEM really well requires a lot of hands-on activities. Hands-on activities take equipment. It takes time to set up. It can be messy. It can be difficult in large classes and in crowded classrooms. So if we can move the 8th grade to the 2nd floor, we open the science lab to all of the students in the school. Also, by moving the 8th grade up to the top floor of the school, it helps with the traffic flow in the school, and it also allows for better collaboration of the faculty in the middle school. Okay, and then regarding just some general upgrades and the administrative wing of the school. So the current education center was built 20 years ago. At the time, it was probably very forward-looking, but education has changed in the last 20 years. The needs are simply different. We have offices in the wrong places, and then we have a shortage of offices in the right places. And some of those walls just really can't be changed all that easily. We have employees that actually have to work off-site. There just isn't room in the building for them, and it really makes collaboration among the staff difficult. There are spaces in the school that are just underutilized, and the current configurations just don't work all that well. There are constant issues with the gates out front and access to the handicap spots. The Loretta room needs a full upgrade, the tables, the dividers, the wall coverings. We need a welcoming entry. We need to know where the entry is, unlike that happened to me on the first day of school. We need an appropriate waiting room for all our visitors. We just need a general reconfiguring of the space and overall facelift in the building. So I'll turn it over to Dan.
Hello. I want to talk a little bit about the church renovation projects that are coming up. We're scheduling for 2021. Seismic retrofit, 1927 building needs it. And we want to maintain the church in its in good shape. So that's just has to happen. Updated lighting. Many churches now are faced with this issue. Both in terms of improving the lighting and also finding light bulbs. It will be, technology is really changing quickly, especially in California. Disabled access improvements, that's something that will automatically be included both inside and around the building. And I should say also connected to the site from street level. There are several maintenance items, of course, in the church building: paint, flooring, finish, those kinds of things. I understand a couple of years ago you did many of the improvements already on your furnishings and fixtures. So we're going, and of course the roofing needed repair for the gutter system and water intrusion. There will be changes along with that to the sound system, to visual projection, to the cameras, and all of those are fairly straightforward questions. We heard broad support from that when we, attended the listening sessions. Secondly, there is a number of improvements planned for the campus. Completing the rectory landscaping, the backyard there, renovating the TV studio, and streamlining the connection between the studio and the church. And general building maintenance. Most of the mechanical systems are 20 years old, so it's time for a tune-up. Not replacement necessarily, but definitely a tune-up for sure. Campus lighting, technology, networking, and video also. So those are planned for the next 2 years, 20 summer, 2021, and then we will be moving on to the longer term projects. I wanted to go to the objectives. Yes. These are objectives that we already looked at before. I want to repeat them because the long-term objectives and the design came from this list, basically, that we collected during our listening sessions with you. All are welcome, of course, is a very strong concept here at Holy Family, not just, running a school, running church services. Obviously, your outreach programs are just terrific. Many people admire this parish for that reason, and we need to keep, supporting that. Deferred maintenance, we already talked about. Many of those things will be addressed during the first 2 years of activity. The student body in one campus, including religious education, that was a very strong theme from all of the people that are connected to the Education Center. The green open campus, of course, is something we'd like to go toward, make the campus more attractive. Support youth ministries, of course. The outreach ministry we already talked about. There's some ideas about how that might be improved. Community multi-use space, so building facilities not for either the school or the parish, but both, and somehow managing security between those populations during the regular scheduled hours. And then, of course, viability into the future for the school and the parish. The first option we looked at, this is chronologically speaking, we looked at an option on this campus, the west side of Fremont, which really covered many of these objectives. The green open campus, we wanted to keep the middle of the campus open. First step, let's move the parking to underground parking. That's an idea I know that's been kicked around here in the parish for years. It's certainly feasible. Building an athletic space for use of the school and for use of the parish community, adults included. So this space is not sized for elementary school only. It's sized a little larger for a typical high school size venue. Some dance yoga space, some sort of flex space that could be used for a number of athletic or semi-athletic programs. A bookstore and a cafe that's really attractive, it's easily visible and fun to both go to and hang out with your laptop. Perhaps a spirituality center and a kind of a quiet garden. All of those things were then generated by the objectives. The first, then that played out into, well, how does that feel? And the feedback we were getting was that it's expensive. The price tag on it didn't particularly surprise us. We did have an outside third-party construction company management check pricing, and this is not the least expensive, but it does sort of solve a lot of problems. And perhaps another major consideration is the fact that in this case the construction would happen right in the center of the parish. If you look around at many of the other parishes who have done projects in recent years, you may notice that most of them are adjacent to a street, so that the construction logistics is a little easier and more straightforward. In this case, this project would have to happen right in the center of campus, so that it would be a bit painful. For those of us who do it all the time, it seems normal. But I think for the parish, it would be difficult and perhaps even affect your ongoing programs. That led us to consideration of the possibility of doing something on the east side of Fremont. We're looking at 2 of the versions. We actually ran 6 or 7 at least different development schemes. So in this case, the Eden Center would be replaced by a new athletic space fronted on Fremont with a bookstore, cafe, a 2-story space. And on the south side, on the second level, you'd have space for the youth ministry, and below space for the support facility, support of the gymnasium or athletic space. The north face of that could have rising doors that open out onto the paved area there where it shows double-loaded parking. That could be used for special events like graduations and things like that. So this would be a fairly straightforward process to address that kind of project. We did not design the building. We're simply showing here a diagram of the mass and the space and how it would fit on the site. the way that played out is, well, first of all, you notice there's no underground parking. So that's a big savings in terms of cost. No one really knows where our habits about parking are going for sure, but it looks like within a generation or two, the riding share will take hold more strongly, and public transit might be a little more available. So parking codes, which haven't changed in many years in Los Angeles, might ease up a little bit. But we're not, we're not counting on this. This particular layout would not require additional underground parking. Also, it's very low disruption of your existing programs, right? This project could take place across the street without interrupting what you're doing. It would require, we believe, a bridge, a pedestrian bridge over Fremont as one component. We priced it out, and that was included in this version's pricing. We did talk to the city public works director, and that department actually likes the idea, although they warned us that it's the first in South Pasadena, so it will be something we need to talk about with the larger community. So that's, but we think it's doable, and that's a process that we need to enter. So I think now I'll turn it over to Michael.
Thanks, Dan. So Mary and I were going to just talk about why the why the East Campus option is ultimately the preferred option. One of the phrases we talked about throughout was the sticky campus when we were doing all the listening sessions, and wanting to make sure that whatever we did, be it a West Campus option or an East Campus option, brought people to church, and then maybe they stayed after. They came to school and they dropped off the kids and they stayed after. Another concept that we talked about was one of the competitive disadvantages of our school is the size of the campus. It's small. And looking at the west option, you have a further intensification of the buildings on the west side. While we add a gym, which is a wonderful thing, we lose more space out here. We lose more open space for the kids to run around in. And then Dan alluded to it, probably the biggest pitfall of all with the West Campus option was an underground parking garage would take 18 months. It would effectively take all of the open space that the kids use every day out of play for 18 months. It could be, it could have long-term effects on the viability of our school, we ultimately concluded. So then we got this idea, and Dan, as Dan says, the city is supportive, at least initially, of the idea of a bridge. So what that does is that expands the campus, really connecting what has always been a disconnected campus. We've always had these properties over here, but now we can bring them together and really speak to that competitive disadvantage that we've sort of struggled with. It's far less expensive, as Dan mentions, less disruption, and then probably most importantly, when we start talking about the sticky campus, it adds a vibrancy to the other side of the street for the parish. We have a coffee shop. We'd have an above-ground bookstore. These are facilities that we feel fairly strongly that parishioners of all ages would avail themselves of and utilize and really bring people here, which is really exciting from my perspective. Let's see. Mary, did you want to?
Thank you, Michael. Like Michael said, and Dan, the East Campus was never really, we never really thought about, we thought about the gym being over there or a community center or putting the bookstore there, but we thought, how are we going to do that safely? How do we get kids across the street? It's just didn't seem practical. And we giggled about, oh, well, let's build a bridge. Let's build a bridge. Well, we actually
got serious about that and thought, well, we got to find out. At least we can check it off the list. And we actually did, as Michael said, we went to the city and they were actually quite open to it. So that led us to have further conversations about what that would do to our parish and school if we didn't have to cramp the space over here. So we looked, Dan and his team did a lot of research. And by the way, they have done a lot of research, and I just want to commend them for all of the time and efforts they have spent with the city and with so many people. So this has not gone without a lot of study. So when we decided that we could actually have the green light to look at the East Campus, it opened up a lot of possibilities. Putting a community center with a gym, and which youth programs just seem naturally to go together like that, and a coffee shop and a bookstore, it created this really exciting, vibrant community space that we felt was probably going to be busy all day long, and not just for ourselves, even for the community as well around us. The high school kids, the middle school kids that walk by us every day home from school. So we really got excited about the opportunity that we could expand the East Campus with this new space. In addition, to even further that, St. Joseph Center, which is historical and is actually quite beautiful, lends itself well to the Giving Bank. It does require, we'd love to do some renovations and bring it really to its full capacity. And at the same time, the front of St. Joseph Center is quite charming, and we thought, wow, we could really give a home to our vibrant theater program. The architects got super excited about that idea, to have a space for that, which here at our school is so very popular. And the Giving Bank, of course, is arguably the largest giving bank in San Gabriel Valley, and we serve hundreds of people every week. So giving that a facelift would, obviously, it's very high on our list. When we're talking about a bridge, it would be private. It would not be a public bridge. It would be secure. And as far as getting kids across for activities, I think the kids would still be using our playground as it is many, many days. But it's more than just a school facility. That's the exciting thing. It would really lend itself to many community opportunities. The city, we still have to do lots of research with and talks with them, but we are now going to share with you just why we really feel that this is the preferred option, which we were very surprised about. We really spent a lot of time building out the West Campus, and now we feel the East Campus is a more viable option for this project. And at this time, I'm going to open it up to some questions. I'm sure people have some questions. We're here to give you answers to the best of our ability. And thank you so much, everybody, for coming tonight. Oh, there's the next steps. Sorry. I got ahead of myself. Save your questions. Okay. So, next steps, obviously. First of all, we're going to dig into the phase one, as Dan and Jackie were talking about. Phase one really is centered on the education center and the church renovations and some other housekeeping things that need to get done around here. And that is going to start right away. So that's exciting. While we're doing all of those things, we're also going to be looking into how we can move forward with phase 2. There is some homework still to be done, so it's not a done deal, but it is something that we still need to find some answers to. So we will be doing that alongside phase 1. Finally, of course, we have to pay for it. And the fundraising will happen. We're formulating that strategic plan now, and you'll hear more about that in the coming months. So with that, I will start with some questions, and all of us will answer your questions according to who will answer it best. So if anybody has any. Yes. Bridge question. And have it, yeah. Sure. I'm going to have him ask the question.
Question was a realistic timeline for phase 2?
No. What's a realistic timeline to know if that bridge is going to be buildable or not? Like, when will we know for sure that we can build that bridge? How long are we talking?
Okay, we, as architects, we are faced with this question many times on almost all of the, larger projects in the city, especially with small cities. So we, the first step is to get the staff, planning staff, public works, whoever in the government has a say in this involved and on your side, basically, in helping direct the next steps. So what we've heard is there will be an environmental impact report required for the East Campus improvements. We anticipated that. It's not a bad thing. It just takes time. One of the first steps would be to get an historic, any property over 45 years in the city of South Pasadena needs to be evaluated for historic, as a historic resource. We feel that the Eden Center will not rise to the same level, of course, as the St. Joseph Center, right? The St. Joseph Center was built in a time when skilled craftsmen were still around building things, and it's a gorgeous building. We're real excited about turning that into a great theater opportunity while still maintaining its usefulness for the Giving Bank program. At the same time, the Eden Center just doesn't rise to that level of architectural relevance. We think that the spaces just aren't quite sized right for the youth program. So that's a good location to build a footprint. We did have one option of building behind the Eden Center. It brings on other problems, including reducing the parking too much. So anyway, you asked for a timeline. We're thinking that the historic study would take maybe 6 months to a year. The city actually selects that consultant. We make a case, we hand it to the city, they select a consultant. The parish pays, of course, for that process, and there's an answer back. You have some great talent in the parish that we're working with hand in hand. Richard and Jaime have been here a while, and so we know the likely people they may pick for this. So that would be a fairly easy first step. The second step is the bridge. That's a matter of talking with planning and with Public Works. We have already broached it with Public Works. They'd love the idea. They just, forecast, of course, the fact that this is an environmental impact review, which Carl and all of you did in the 2000 project with your specific plan. So it's just that type of process all over again. And we feel strongly that there is a good chance that it will work because it has to do with the safety of children crossing the street. So that we'll get a level of surety after we have the staff reaction, but you won't be totally sure until the actual EIR is processed and approved, and your specific plan is in place. So that's as good as it gets on that question. It's the EIR is the first two steps would be happening during the next 2 years. The EIR would happen with a proposal for what we'd replace the Eden Center with. So there'd be schematic design for a building that would meet the constraints of the historic review and would also satisfy the needs of the parish. And that step would happen sometime in, we would like it to happen in 2021 or 2022 it would start. But, we need to look forward to new leadership here who would also be invested in the same concept and have a say in it. So we're predicting 2 years from now, we would actually begin the EIR formation and the approval process, which would probably take maybe 6 months, something like that. So that would be the middle of 2022, something like that.
Thanks, Dan.
Welcome.
Hi. Could you give us an estimated total cost of this project in numbers, please?
We have done a quick overview based on square footage costs, and the East Campus option that you saw, and it's around between $10 and $11 million for that project. It's what we're using as a comparative basis for the West Campus option.
Quick follow-up. What kinds of criteria or plans are you putting in place for fundraising to meet that amount of money?
Well, that remains to be seen. Mary might know.
I'm happy to answer that. We have a wonderful master planning committee. Out of that master planning committee, we have begun creating a small campaign committee to come together and plan for the best way to manage the costs, number one, and to see through to fruition the support that is here. And it takes time to build a campaign. And so the campaign itself is not imminent, but you will learn more about it. We're in the very baby stages. But we will be inviting everyone's support, and we look forward to a very exciting, vibrant campaign to see the project through. Julia?
So sort of follow up to that, is that 10 to 11, does that count the phase one, or is that just the East Campus project?
It's a great question. The phase one is not included in that 10 million. The phase one, we estimate anywhere from 5 to 7 million. We are still collecting costs, and we are still doing drawings. So we won't have those solid numbers for a couple of months still. Bob?
How many students do we have currently in the school? In 1 through 8, right? And how many CCD students that we have that gravitate over from the high school? And the follow-on question is, we used to have a number as to how much we were subsidizing annually the school. It used to be like $350,000 a year. That was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But anyway, what is it now? What is the deficit on the school?
Darcy will answer that.
Okay, the first question was, there are 302 students in the school.
So, and in terms of CCD, I think we're at about 200 and 40 or 50. Colette or anybody from, I don't know if Colette's here, about 240 religious education students. And then in terms of the school operates at a profit. It is not in a deficit situation. However, we still do subsidize the school, but we subsidize the school to the tune of about, Jane, correct me if I'm wrong, about 100,000 a year, 80 to 100, sorry? 80,000 a year, and then of course we pick up the cost for any significant maintenance or renovation or whatever, typically. So for example, we made a significant contribution towards the playground to the tune of about 100,000. Other costs that we picked up over the years, but the school is operating at a very healthy budget at this point.
Hi, thank you for all the work. It looks great. I have two questions. One about the overpass, the pedestrian bridge. Somebody noted that it would be secure only for the students, but has it been considered to make it more public so that a selling point with South Pass would be that people going to the high school or crossing from the middle school could use it too, in terms of kids? And then the other question is about the parking for the East Campus. It looked like it would be reduced. Can you speak to how much that side would be reduced?
Well, the first question about the public use of the pedestrian bridge, I think it's feasible, of course, and the city may have something to say about this. The city will, just like your specific plan, it's sort of a revocable permit. In other words, there will be some rules, and if the various rules are not met over time, the city has the right to revoke the permit for the use, right? Just like for the last 20 years, you've been operating very well under what you put together for a specific plan in, I believe, 1997. It was actually written. So we don't know. We thought it might be good to start with the idea of a private use, so we don't have problem with people camping out and maintenance issues and security issues. So the big issue is, what can we do to make it safe for the children to cross the bridge? One teacher leading 35, fifth graders. And I would need at least 2 helpers to do that in a vacant street. So we're certainly not crossing the street, but the pedestrian bridge might work well. The second question, what was it about? Oh, the parking count, 73. You currently have 76 by your specific plan. So when we got into the 70s, we thought we're good. It's very expensive to build underground parking. We feel that that's a decision that you could make. You could add underground parking to the East Campus project if someone came by and wanted to fund it. But it's quite expensive. And during the life of that structure, it's even likely that amount of parking would no longer be needed. So that's kind of another issue. It's sort of over the horizon, right? But underground parking structures will live many, many years past when those of us in this room are here. So we're happy to not build it if we don't need it, and use the money for other programs in the parish. But the basic concept is your parking arrangement on grade stays the way it is. That doesn't mean we can't green this campus a little bit. There are some creative ways to do that. You can imagine if there is an athletic facility across the street, safely accessible, perhaps you don't need all of the basketball standards in the exact location they are now, and you could have maybe a more logical, let's say, parking layout that would be a little more functional. And we could also green it up a bit. There are ways to do that. So And you would be actually developing something in ground, not on a concrete podium deck, right? So there are some advantages to that too. That answer your question? Okay. 73. 76. On this side, you have 86 by plan. You would keep 86. So you'd have 156 total cars on the two campuses, just the way they are now, plus your agreement with the high school for the Bank Street parking lot.
Hey, Dan, just to give people maybe a little more context, could you talk about what the budget was looking like for doing the West Campus? And also tell how much of that was underground parking. I think it kind of puts people in things in perspective.
The budget on the West Campus, in the master plan report we submitted to your master plan committee, was $17 million. $6 million of that was involved with the underground parking. So whether you build parking on the West Campus, it's $6 million, or on the East Campus underground parking, $6 million. We were surprised. We thought it would be much less expensive on the East Campus, but when we did the numbers, it was actually similar. So that's just not going to go away. One of our first questions when Cambria and Mary and I spoke with the city manager was, do you anticipate a change in your parking requirements? And we received a strong nope. Not in the foreseeable future. We are not going to be changing our parking requirements. So 156 cars is sort of a golden number for that we need to meet one way or the other. The only other way would be to buy other property or go up in the chances. We looked at some second level parking deck on the East Campus. Because of the ramping, it really wasn't efficient. Spent lots of money for 23 cars extra. So didn't make sense. It did not. Neither of these numbers includes the cost for phase one. We're hopeful that we can get the cost for phase one below some of the numbers that were quoted here earlier tonight. We can do that when we have a schematic plan, which we hope to have within a matter of a couple months. So we hope we're going to be able to get a much more accurate number on the phase one costs soon. If you add the two together, yep. The bottom line is if you add the 17 plus 5 to 7, you end up $20 to $25 million for the West Campus option, and it's the same add to the East Campus option, 11 million plus 5 to 7. Yes.
My question is more towards a design issue. With regard to the idea of building a bridge, have you guys thought about having a bridge that is connected from building to building?
This bridge would be connected building to building.
Okay.
It would take advantage of the fact that you have an elevator right here, for example, for disabled access. We would be building an elevator on the other side for a 2-story section of the building. So it would be building to building is possible, or because the stairway here is possibly in use, I kind of envision an outdoor stairway here that would proceed across the street to intersect the other building. Yes.
In the most ideal timeline, what is the fastest time frame we're looking at from today to completion of project?
5 years. That's the fastest. Yeah, I would say, 2 years, some time for entitlements, some time for, about 5 years. That's the fastest time frame. Mm-hmm.
Hi, 2 questions. So first, will any portion of the school revenue be used to fund the project? And Also, will any portion of the amount that the church has been contributing to the school be reallocated to the project?
I would say at this point, no, because neither the church budget nor the school budget could support additional renovation building costs. So pretty much all of those costs are going to have to be raised from other sources beyond the general parishioner giving and the tuition charges that parents pay. Fair enough, Mary?
I have a question about the seismic retrofitting, which I'm enjoying at this point in my house right now. Will there be some FEMA support for the implementation of this? Because we are, according to the South Pasadena, the new general plan, the earthquake fault is pretty close to us, where the Raymond Hill is. And I'm wondering if there are, if in part of the planning for doing this seismic retrofitting, that there will be some coordination with either FEMA or state resources to offload some of the cost.
We did some homework on that. The answer we received was that there's really not anything on site, number one, or near enough to require a investigation, put it that way. It's built into the current code. You actually have an expert right here in the parish on seismic retrofit who backs that up, I believe. So there's nothing particularly different or unanticipated in so far looking at this site for seismic retrofit. It's simply that the building was built in 1927, and over the years, every earthquake cycle in Los Angeles, we have updated the code statewide, and it's a different animal than it used to be. Yeah.
That's an excellent question. Her question is, will we be doing one big fundraiser campaign, or will we be breaking it up into two phases? We are looking at that literally as we speak tonight. We have a great group of expert fundraisers here in the parish who we are collaborating with to plan that out the best way we can. And you will hear more about the fundraising in the coming months.
Is the parish planning on taking on any debt to fund this, or will this be all cash to fund the completion?
I think as much as possible, we're not going to take on any debt. We anticipate raising the full amount of money that we'll need to do this, and obviously there's a lot of work that has to be done. And the Archdiocese requires us to have kind of money in the bank before we start on any building project. So it's not like we get halfway into something, we can't go forward, we can't go back because there's no money. So there are a lot of controls in place with the Archdiocese, and Tim, I don't know if you want to speak to anything about that. There are always startup costs. There's a lot of design costs and fees and that kind of thing. We're also hoping to raise money to cover those as we go forward. So we don't like to take on debt at a Holy Family, so as much as possible that would be the absolutely last resort, and I don't anticipate it being an issue at this point.
But anyway, on the parking with South Pasadena High School has been really good. But I wonder, did we explore with them the use of their gym at all? Or in other words, is their gym tied up all the time? Because
yes,
none of the
yes, it is. No, I mean it's a great idea, and actually we do leverage South Pasadena High School athletic facilities. Our jogathon is on their track, and I think we use it. Do we use it some other times as well? The gym, track team uses it, but they have a very, very significant and extremely active athletics program, one of the best in the state, and it's very busy all the time. So they've been generous with letting us use it when we can.
Right, because their elementary schools do not have gyms at all.
Well, actually, most elementary schools, parochial schools around us do have gyms. That's one of the reasons when Michael was saying we're at a competitive disadvantage. That's really true.
Mayfield does.
Sorry, Mayfield has a gym. They just, in fact, the person who raised the money for the gym, Mayfield, junior, sorry, not senior, junior does have a gym. Was that right? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, they do. Yeah, so everybody has a gym except for us.
Any more questions?
Just in my experience, school gyms are used from 7 in the morning until 10 at night. It's hard to get the floor clean. It's between parishioners, between students, between community events, between dads that want to have basketball at 9 o'clock at night. It will be so hard. I've been there, couldn't even get the floor scrubbed because the gym was booked solid all day long, 7 days a week.
Just to be explicit, do you anticipate increase in tuition to help fund this project?
No. And that's why we're talking about fundraising.
So I want to say thank you for all of you coming out tonight. For how many of you participated in at least one of the community meetings or the ministry meetings? So most of you here. So thank you very much for the input that you gave. I hope you know how much we listened to you. We had lots of discussions with the master planning group, with the architects over the direction we were hearing from the parish about what you expected and wanted and felt that we needed. And we really tried to take that all on board, honoring all the different stakeholders and the people, all different stages and ages of their experience and their journey with Holy Family. It's a big parish, 5,200 households, people who are very invested here and have been very invested for decades and decades. So it's no small undertaking to begin a project like this to look to the future, honoring the people who've been here for many, many decades and in some cases generations, as well as looking to attracting people in the future. So I think this is a wonderful balance that we're trying to honor all the different needs and the challenges that we face as a Catholic community moving forward. So I hope you're as excited, and you'll be hearing more about this over the next few months. But this is the beginning step of the next phase, which is really to go into the design phase, to do the homework that Mary and Michael talked about, to ensure that we can make these grand designs and bold visions for the East Campus come to life. And obviously we're going to have to do a lot of work with the city, a lot of work with our neighbors, with the wider South Pasadena community, because I'm sure there will be resistance. There's never a change in South Pasadena that doesn't meet with resistance. But as Dan said, we have a very compelling argument as to why we need to build a bridge. It's really about paramount, first and foremost, it's about the safety of our children and of our students, and of being able to maximize our property and for the needs of our school and parish community as we look ahead to the 21st century. So this is a bold and exciting moment in Holy Family, and I think we're building on the shoulders of Monsignor and Carl, who were bold visionaries, with many of you sitting here who were present for the Vision Project 20 years ago. And I know that Monsignor and Carl will both tell you that those bold ideas were met with resistance in some quarters. But I also believe that what we're trying to do here is truly listen to the Holy Spirit and be guided by the Holy Spirit, not because we're trying to build up the parish per se, but because the grander vision, the grander design is very much about the evangelization of Catholics, of bringing people back to the church, bringing new people to the church, and continuing to not just to sustain who we are as the Catholic community of faith, but to grow into the future and to meet the needs of the people who are here, but also the needs of the people into the future that are going to come to Holy Family. And that's what we should be doing as a parish and as a community of faith and as the kingdom of God. So please join us on this exciting journey into a future, uncharted territory in some respects, but very charted in other ways. And I know that I think together we can come together as a community and make this happen. So I know you'll have questions. We'll be communicating with you over the next few months, throughout the next few years as this project unfolds, and we'll certainly be keeping you abreast of all the developments as they happen. And we'll be calling upon you, not just to help us raise the money, but for your support, perhaps at city council meetings, or talking with our neighbors in South Pasadena, spreading the word around, and being very positive ambassadors about the future of Holy Family. And the future is us. So we all have faith in our future. So thank you, and God bless you.